here we go. We're going to be now talking about family communication. And we will spend this session and stop. It'll be really 2 parts and continue it in the next day. So these 2 parts will be back to back. A family. We all come from family of some sort. We may come from what we would think is a very healthy family, where we knew our parents and our grandparents and so forth. And we, of course, had a father and a mother and grandmother and or a couple grandfathers and grandmothers and so forth. And we have this, that we're part of the tree, and it's quite dynamic, it's quite exciting. And really our family tree branches out in upward in generations before us. And the key connection for us is our father and mother. We are the children of our parents, but there's that extended sort of family. I certainly had that. I have had uncles and aunts. Many have passed away now. My parents have passed away. Several years ago now, about 10 years ago, my mother passed away, and father passed away the year before that. But I had uncles and aunts. Most of them have passed away, although I still have 3 aunts on my father's side that are still alive. And their husbands have all passed away. And so what now I have, of course, my oldest brother passed away because of a disease. My next brother, who's a little bit older than me, is alive and doing fine. And then myself, and then I have 3 younger sisters. So we're all part of this branch. And I have cousins that are part of the Congo family. And just 2 or 3 days ago, the oldest cousin that I have, his name Wayne, he passed away just about 2 or 3 days ago. And so you know as well as I do that we start as a baby and we go through life, we get older. And then there's this lifespan where our life here on earth ends. Now, from a personal, spiritual side, I believe that theologically, those who have a relationship with God continue in life that's eternal, but it's in the spiritual realm, not in the physical realm of earth, and so forth. But coming back to the idea of family tree, like you, I have children who are adults, and I have 3 grandchildren. I got a picture to show you of my family, and they're part of our family tree. Yesterday, we had our 2 grandsons over, and tomorrow our granddaughter comes over to our house after school. Here's a definition that comes from Yerby, Berkel, Rothfuss, and Bachner. And they say this, in understanding family communication. A family is a multi-generational social system. And I think you would agree that we all have that sort of experience of multi-generational. And social system consisting of at least 2 interdependent people. And we have, of course, many in my setting, and my wife, many in her setting, interdependent people bound together by a common living space. So right now, in this house, Joanne and I live in this house. Our 2 daughters used to live here. And in fact, this room that has been my office for a number of years used to be my oldest daughter's bedroom. And I made it into an office when she left. And I remember the first day she came back after we made it in an office, she was shocked that her bedroom no longer looked like a bedroom. And we now use it, of course, for the purposes that we're using it for right now. And it's been like this for a number of years. Bound together by a common living space. This is where Joanne and I live at one time or another. And a common history. So at one time or another, my daughters used to live here. Now they don't. They live in their own places. Both with their husbands own their places. At one time, they lived here. Now they have theirs, and my oldest daughter has children, and they have bedrooms and rooms of their own, etc. And a common history. There is a common history that all you have. You have a common history with your parents and your grandparents and your uncles and your aunts and your extended family. There's a common history that you have. There's also a unique history that you personally have, but you have a common history. I have a common history with two family roots. Congo, which is my father's last name, and Conrad was my mother's last name. And so we have common history together. And now Joanne and I have been married almost 50 years, and we have common history, and our daughters have come out of that marriage, and they have a common history attached to us, and who share some degree of emotional attachment to or involvement with one another. Well, that's true. Joanne and I have been married nearly 50 years, and I have never doubted that this was a wise thing to do, and I'm content in that marriage. So a family is a multi-generational social system consisting of at least two interdependent people bound together by a common living space at one time or another, and a common history, and who share some degree of emotional attachment to or involvement with one another. So we are all in some unique way connected together. Uh, Now, we might add things or subtract things from uh, this definition, but I think it gives us a basic substance to work with in understanding the idea of family. Now, in North America, uh, there's obviously a different cultural relationship in family to, for instance, people in different countries, not all countries, that are Asian background, for instance. And those things, because of culture, we're going to have some differences. I have always respected in the Asian background, where I found the extended family to be of great importance, still is here in North America, but I find it unique, or was unique. I can't say it 100% true. In um, the Asian countries, or many of them, I was always impressed with some neighbors that we had. They were from China, and they lived right next door to us years and years ago, to the left of us. And in the house where they had two daughters, then the father and the mother, and then they had the one set of grandparents that lived with them. And I found that very refreshing to see that somehow, in a unique way, that this made sense to them and worked well. And I'm very impressed with how well they have done that. In North America, we tend to be independent that way. A couple gets married, they go do their own thing. They might even move quite away from the family, and some don't, but a lot have done that in the past. And I've always been impressed with people who've been able to keep that common ground connection with their family together. Uh, there's so much to learn that gets handed down from a grandfather, a grandmother to children, and from parents to children. And so I think there's a richness to living in extensive, extending ways. Now, I'll just get my computer here going. There we are. This is my family. I'm just gonna, there we are. This is my family. And that's me up there. My hair doesn't look like that now. All my hair, my hairdresser said, pull your hair down. So I decided to do it that way. This is my oldest son-in-law. And this is my second oldest son-in-law. This is my wife, Joanne, here. And she's downstairs right now. She just came home from teaching children all day. And these are my two daughters. This is Tanya, married to Ryan. This is Melissa, married to Chris. And Ryan and Chris are brothers. These two are brothers. As these are sisters, these two are brothers here. And so my two daughters have the same married last name, Porth. They were Congo, here's the Congos. Then they married a Porth. So now Tanya Porth and Melissa Porth. And then I have from this couple here, Ryan and Tanya in the middle, I have these three, I should say, have these three grandchildren. Ariana is our oldest. She is now nine, I'm just making sure, nine, it's funny, what year is this? 2020. She was born in 2010. So she's born in 2010. Does that make her 10 years old? I didn't think she was double digits yet. So I guess she's 10 years old. I thought she was 9. No, she's 10 years old. And then she is 10. And then Rylan, right here, he was born in February as Ariana was 2 years later. So he is 8 years old. And then Griffin here, Griffin is 6 years old, and so she's in 5th grade, 3rd grade, and 1st grade. So this is my family. And, as you can see, we have extended beyond ourselves. Joanne and I were married 50 years ago this December. And then 5 years later, Tanya came. And not about 3 years and 7 months after that, Melissa came. So this is my family. So you, I'm sure, have pictures of your family and your parents and so forth. It always is fun to see what the pictures look like. By the way, you're welcome to send me pictures of you, your parents, just so I could see what your family looks like. But give me your name and tell me your if you're using a Canadian name, give that to me too. That helps. So I'd love to see the pictures if you ever have time to do that, but you don't obviously have to do that. That's my family. I want to show one more picture of my grandchildren. As you know, this is Ariana, Rylan, and Griffin. And she is kind of the maternal. She's kind of, almost like the mother. And they both, Rylan and Griffin, do listen to her. And so we had a professional taking pictures, and this is one of those pictures. And it's a nice picture taken. Now, this picture was taken just over a year ago. So it's, children change. We'll have to get some new pictures in the near future. But we really, we enjoy our family. Okay. There. I want us to look at this diagram. Oh, wait a minute. I should ask you, you can see my PowerPoints, can you?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I should always do that just to make sure. This here is kind of a look at understanding the issue of family. On the top, you can see up here, it says the word cohesion. And on the side here, it says adaptability. This is low cohesion, and then this becomes higher cohesion. And this is low adaptability at the bottom, and this is high adaptability, okay? Now, along with that, you have kind of four potential, or three, excuse me, developments that you can have in a family. You could be in the black section, you could be in the dark gray section, or you could be in the white section. The further away you get from the middle, the more unhealthy you become. And it's possible to be there. I can think of some families that are that way. So let me talk about the middle part first. At the very top is the issue of being there's my mouse, being flexible. You're flexible, but you're nicely connected together, or you're flexible and you're separated. And both ways can work. It really, in part, works on the family culture itself. Being flexibly connected means that you are completely connected, but you really are strongly flexible in your connection together. You are connected. Where on this side, you are connected, but you're much more separated, but you're flexible in handling that. That's fine. You accept that. You get together, but you're okay with lots more space for your own life. Here, you're flexible, but you're much more connected. There's a lot more interconnection of what goes on here. And it's not a matter of either one is better than the other. It's a matter of the way your family culture has developed it, partly maybe through what your parents are used to, or what you are used to. And I don't know why my mouse keeps disappearing here on me. So this area here, more flexibility, but based on being connected. Over here, more flexibility, but based on more on being separated. And you work well. So you get together a lot here, you get together less here, but you're quite flexible in handling that. The bottom part is are two more rather healthy areas. You can be structurally connected. So this is more flexible. This is more structural, much more structure put here and very strong connection. This has got the strongest connection here from a structural perspective. This has got more stronger connection but more flexible in that process. This side over here to the left, you've got the structural separated. You are very organized as a family, but you still are very accepting of not being emotionally or physically connected together in the same way. Then if you come up here, you have, um, structurally separated and structurally connected. So you have these two here. So you have separation both times here, you have connection both times here, but this is more flexible and this is more structural, much more connected. This is still well connected, but not so much structure, how you do this. For instance, on the bottom here, this family would always eat their meals together, or at least their evening meal together. These people might have different schedules, but they can't, and they're flexible and they accept that. Over here, it's quite often that you eat your meals separated from your family. You don't get together like necessarily that way. You might at times. And here there's more structure, but there's structure within the realm of still enjoying that separation. So all these can be healthy and beneficial. Um, and I would say that Joanne and I tend to be more structurally connected. This is kind of where our family grew up right here, and I feel the best about that. Now, you can see the word structural on both sides also fits into the gray area over here. And this here means that you're enmeshed. It means you almost cannot not spend time with each other. You're always spending time with each other. Okay, so to the point where you won't even start eating your evening meal till you're all together because the family does that. That's ultimately enmeshed together. That's extremely important. Where you come over here, you're structurally still, but you're disengaged, and at the same time, you're not emotionally as connected. Over here, everything is emotional. Everything, everybody shares everything about the day. Over here, people will share some things about their day, but not all things because there are some things they want to keep to themselves. And then when you come up to the top here, the word flexibility becomes a key word. As you can see, flexibly. Over here, you're flexibly, but you're enmeshed. Even though you give space, you're still demanding of knowing a lot about each other. Where over here, you're much more disengaged and you're flexible about that. So it's a very different, this disengagement and mesh are exactly the opposite to each other. As you can see, you have it here and here also. So you got a little different flavor. Now, when you come up here, you even create another dynamic here where you're flexibly enmeshed over in here. You're chaotically connected. Your home, your family is almost seemingly chaotic, but yet you're connected over here, where you're separated over here. And in fact, this is even further involved with your family, both in the chaotic side. Okay, quite far from being involved, but you still are chaotic, not all that involved, chaotic, but having connection. When you come down here, the key word is rigid. You're rigidly separated. You really spend little time. The fact is, you have your own TV in your room. You often eat your own meal in your room. Your computer's in your room. You go out of your room to go to the washroom and say hi and get ready to go out the door. But you're home and you spend a lot more time by yourself. Where here, you're much more connected. So you spend more time together where what you do. So you have chaotic connectedness up here, but rigid connectedness here, rigidly separated here, and chaotically separated up here. So you've got different flavors in the gray area that they could go from here, over here, or over here, 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 or here, here, or here. Now, the white area is by far what I would call the more dangerous place to be. As you can see, that it's extreme. This is mid-range in this gray area, and then this is more balanced. This is more balanced here. Chaotically enmeshed means that your life goes in many directions, but you always accountable and answerable to your parents. So the word enmeshed is very important on the, see here, on, oh, you can see this, the word enmeshed all the way down. You're tangled together, and it's good to be connected, strongly connected, but as a parent, it's important not to be so enmeshed that your children actually come to you when they're 18 years old and say, what should I wear today? They're actually looking for you to tell them. That's being too enmeshed. They need to be making those decisions. So you want to, I would say you want to be careful about the enmeshed side of things, because it really creates a challenge, whether you're rigid, structural, flexible, or chaotic. But the chaotic enmeshed and the rigid enmeshed means everything you do is dependent on one another, where this means you're enmeshed, but you make many of your own decisions compared to here. Chaotically disengaged means that you are so completely on your home. Your home, if you're a teenager, your home is almost like a restaurant and a hotel. You don't necessarily spend that much time with your siblings or your parents at all. A sense of family, yes, it exists, but it's not as strong as it could be. Rigidly and disengaged means that you are very, very firm about being on your own while the house is like a hotel and your restaurant. So the white is by far the worst. You got less cohesion as a family going in these directions here. Much more cohesion the more you go over here. Much more adaptable up here, less adaptable down here. So you've got these different flavors, and understanding your family, it's not a bad idea. Like you might say, you know what, I'm going to use this here in that essay, and I'm going to identify where I come from as a family. And whatever it is, you're going to choose one of these and say, this is definitely me, and this is how that works out, and how I live my life, or how I relate to my parents, or to my brothers and sisters, or to my grandparents. So you might want to use this design by taking some time and saying, okay, really, where do I sit? See, so the black is more balanced, the gray is more mid, and the white is extremely outside of the realm. And this is by far the more dangerous sort of place to be. It's a good idea to really think about your family of origin. You can write about it honestly with me. You don't have to show it to anybody if you don't want to. So that's an important area that we need to be cognizant of. Now, I want to talk about the 5G family. This is not something you will necessarily fully agree with. That's fine. But this is something that I actually developed. And I need to explain why I developed, or how it developed, and why I developed this. Um, as a family, we used to walk a lot together. As you know, I walk a lot anyways now on my own. I've already walked over 17,500 steps today. I've put on over 13 kilometers today. And my objective is to get to 16.44 kilometers. So it's 3 more kilometers to do, and I'll be basically done. Walking has always been important. And as a family, we spent coming back here just to show you, um, we were much more structurally connected right here. This was much more of how we lived our lives. And so my family and I had structure, and we were connected. We did things together. Now, my children still did their own thing. We absolutely agreed with that and thought that very important for them. But as a family, we also felt that strong roots are really important to the family. And good communication needs to take place between siblings and between parents and children, because when that happens, you develop, you share values, and you pass on values. I don't agree that it's wise to say that your children should figure out their own values. I think parents are there to help teach values. And I had this one place where I really shared values, and I used communication to do that. My daughters were getting older, and we would go for walks, and I would start sharing something with them. And over time, I developed this model. It didn't happen on one walk, it happened over a few. And then I began to speak more deliberately about that as they got older and older, because I knew that young men would come and take interest in my daughters. And I thought it's really important for them to think about what to look for in a man. So originally, this was called the 5G man. This is what I said you should look for in a man. And if he doesn't have these, don't build a emotional relationship, romantic relationship with him, because it will probably hurt you. So it's wiser to ensure that these dynamics are there. And over time, I developed them, and eventually, as I was developing, I got the words to all start with the letter G. So there are 5 of them. The first letter starts with G, and then I moved that. I did seminars, and I had one of the seminars I did had a couple hundred women in it, mothers, and I got such a strong response from people about this. They told me I should write a book on it. I didn't, but I really felt quite strongly that these factors are important. And in family, I think as a parent, first of all, as an adult, you need to be these things. As a husband, you need to be these things. As a wife, you need to be these things, I believe. And then your children need to be taught these things, and you need to teach them not just with words, but by how you treat each other as a husband and wife, because that will teach children so much. And I strongly believe so. I began more and more talking to my daughters about each of these principles. And you may or may not agree with them, and that obviously is your choice. But I felt the central spot is the issue of spirituality. We're more than just flesh and blood. When we die and we turn to dust, we're more than just that body that now doesn't breathe any longer and will turn to dust. I believe in the spirituality. I believe in the inner person. And I believe that our bodies are really a tool God has given us to live our lives with the spiritual domain built within us. And so I believe that God should be at the center. And so I told my daughters, when you're going out with a guy, or you're thinking about accepting a date, or one day when you think about getting married, make sure that the man is godly, that he has spirituality, that he stands for some values that are critical. And I have taught my daughters this all along. So the first 5G issue is being godly. The second issue is being gracious, being gracious. So I said to my daughters, not only do you need to see if they're godly, but how gracious are they? Well, what does gracious mean, or what does the word grace mean? It actually means unmerited favor. It means a person who gives people um, a favor. They are gracious to them. When they make mistakes, they don't say they're useless. They say things like that happen. Graciousness goes to the point of the other person saying, I'm sorry I did something wrong, please forgive me. And you have the grace to say, I forgive you. And so that's important. And I shared with my daughters how important it is to have that gracious aspect built in the man, that you one day might say, yes, I'm willing to be married to you. Very important. The next one is being gentle. I believe that as a husband and wife, you need to be gentle in your spirit towards each other. Doesn't mean you won't make mistakes, but we need to learn to be gracious, to be willing to forgive, but we need to be gentle in how we treat one another, not just physically, but emotionally, and in any other important way. And I taught my daughters, how does a man treat you? If ever the man suddenly slugs you or hits you, run from the man. because he doesn't have a gentle spirit. And he will continue to do that. The more abuse that happens, the more abuse happens. You have to stand up and say, abuse is unacceptable. And so I told my daughters, watch how they treat you. And by the way, watch how they treat their mother. So that's what I said to them. Watch the man, this man that's interested in you, how they treat their mother. That'll tell you something of how they're likely going to treat you. And so you have the godly, the gracious, the gentle, and then you have the generous. Oh, coming back to gentle for a second, there was a picture I saw once that really captures the idea of gentle for me. It was a picture of a really large hand. I mean, this was of a man. I mean, it was a big hand. He probably was a football player. I mean, the hand was massive. I mean, my hand would be tiny compared to his. And in the palm of this hand, this big man was a baby, a newborn baby. I mean, the baby was bigger than, of course, me, my hand, because my hand's so much smaller. But this guy's hand was so big. It's just monstrous hand. And it was gently holding this baby because he could take this hand and he could crush the baby. But this hand would never do that. That's gentleness. Generous. Generous is the idea that it is not about me, it is about us. And in it being about us, for me, it's about you. I put you before I put myself. When a person is all about themselves, how they talk, what they think, what they do, there's a real major problem there. And being generous means the willingness to go the extra mile. Generous means being willing to be a servant leader to the other person. It means being willing to do those sorts of things that are enable that person and help that person. And so uh, I said to my daughters, um, I said to them, you need to look for a man that is generous in how they treat other people, how they give of themselves, their time, their material goods, and that's critical. Then the last principle is good reputation. What do other people say about you? So that's what I said to my daughters. What do other people say about this guy? Ask around. Ask people quietly. Tell me seriously about this person. And you know the difference when you hear a good reputation and not a good reputation. It becomes very, very obvious. Well, I believe when a man is like that with a woman and a woman is like that with a man, and they get married, they become like that to each other and they become like that with their children. And their children begin to take that on. And the family grows up having God at the center, being gracious, unmerited favor to people, being gentle how you treat people, being generous with your time, with your money, with your material goods, and having a reputation that's highly, highly respected. That is a powerful thing. And how did I come up with this model? I came up with it by walking with my daughters, by talking and developing it till it became this. And my daughters got married to guys, and the first guy, Ryan, the oldest, when he um, proposed marriage, he did it at Tanya's school. He was a teacher at a different school, not far from here. She was at another school further over in the other part of the city. And just as the bell rang, before the bell rang, the principal asked Tanya to come out in the hallway, and Ryan was there, and he had the ring in the case in his hand, and he was proposing marriage, and all the children were coming out as the bells rang. And I actually have this picture of him when Tanya with the finger in the ring and all the children around and all realizing what was taking place. It was quite a wild experience. But when he proposed, he said, I promise to be godly, gracious, gentle, generous, and to develop a good reputation. And the reason he did that is because when he came to talk to me and Joanne about marriage, and that was funny when that happened. It was a summer day, and well, excuse me, it was a nice day, spring day, excuse me, and it was a warm out. And he loves to cycle, and he'd cycled from where he was, and he came over, and the doorbell rang, and I could see through the window it was Brian. And in my mind, I knew what he was there for. He was going to ask me if he could ask Tanya, propose marriage to Tanya. And he came in and says, "Hi, I just been out biking." He was sweating, and he said, "My bottle's empty. I was wondering if I could just get it filled." Well, he wanted cold water. I said, "Absolutely." Well, I went and got cold water, and I'm thinking, right, you didn't just come with an empty container of water, container for water. You came to ask me a question. So I came back and says, "Well, now that I'm here, I was wondering if I could talk to you about something." And that's when he asked Joanne and I for permission to ask Tanya to be his wife. And I said, "You got to hear this first. This is what I've taught Tanya to expect in a man: to be godly, to be gracious, to be gentle, to be generous, and have a good reputation. You have to let me know that you're going to do that." And he said, "I will." I said, "You got my blessing. Go ahead." The power of communication is also important to talk about here. The power of communication. Communication is powerful, but it can be, but communication, what's communicated in marriage and in family, can be positive or negative. There are three dynamics here that I want us to see. The first one is loveless power. You don't love, you insist on power. You insist it'll be your way. There's no grace in this at all. There's no love in this at all. It's demanding. It's you will do it my way without argument, without question at all. I'm in charge. You do what I say. The other side to this is powerless love. This is a person controlled by the loveless power person. This is a person who gets walked on, not physically, but figuratively by the other person. And they don't have any sort of sense of well-being because they get mistreated um, all the time. And that's really not a healthy sort of situation to be in. It's powerless love that has been expressed here. Both these are very damaging to a marriage relationship. They're both very damaging to a parental relationship. When you treat your spouse without love, when you treat your children without love, but you insist that you're in control, that skews how they look at life. It makes it very difficult for them. And they only see the reality of people being demanding. On the other side, powerless love is a person who's lost their sense of dignity. They've lost their sense of identity because they're controlled by a loveless power person. And so they don't have power at all, though they have a strange form of love, but it's not the healthy form of love. You see, the ultimate healthy form of love was put by Jesus in the Bible when he said, "There is no greater love than this, than when one lays their life down for another." When you are willing to die for the other person, when you are willing to sacrifice for the other person, when you're willing to give to the other person, not because they demand it, but because you give it freely. Now that's powerful love. See, that's the love of a servant leader. The idea that they work well together. Well, coming down to the third and last part of this is the word at the bottom of this, like it's like a teeter-totter, as you can see. Powerful love. Powerful love is very different than loveless power or powerless love. Powerful love is about true love. This is the work of the servant leader. This is one who willingly sacrifices and serves the other. I've done a lot of marital counseling. I have never had a couple come in to me and say, "You need to help us. We're so in love with each other. We so enjoy serving each other. Help us. What are we doing wrong?" I would say, "You're not doing anything wrong. You're doing it right." You see, when you serve the other out of love, that person is compelled to serve you back out of love. And so there's a mutual love there. That becomes powerful love. It's sacrificial. It's a willingness to lay your life down for another. So you could live a life of loveless power. You will be very lonely because most people will not really give you true love. They may fake it to protect themselves, but it won't be really true love. Powerless love, you may be faking doing what the other person wants because you don't want to get them upset. You're fearful of that. You live in fear. So the loveless power person lives in control. The powerless love person lives in fear. But the powerful person, the powerful love that a person really should be giving, they live for fulfillment. Why? Because as they serve as a servant, the other accepts it, but they serve you back as a servant. You become servants and you become leaders to each other, all built in one idea. So the power of communication. And I believe that communication is one of the most powerful tools we use to demonstrate powerful love. The power of communication, the issue of love languages. There's a book I recommend that you consider getting. You can Google it. Perhaps you can't find it if you live in a foreign country. You may not be able to find this. But Gary Chapman wrote a book. Actually, it's a few books now, but his first and his major book was called The Five Love Languages. The Five Love Languages. In that, he talks about the fact that these five areas are ways that we should demonstrate love. But he also points out that there's usually one or two that we tend to be more effective and efficient with than the other ones. Not that they shouldn't exist, not that they don't, but there's certain ones here that we tend to do much more comfortably than others. He talks about words of affirmation. You find in your language words that encourage another person. You're not just always looking out your way to say, how can I show words of affirmation? It simply happens. It becomes part of your natural person. Words of affirmation are words that encourage the soul. Have you ever had somebody say something really nice to you that they appreciated about you? Well, that's a powerful way to express love. It makes you feel valuable, makes you feel of importance and significance. The second love language is that of quality time. You enjoy being with the other person. You enjoy spending time together. Time is a valuable commodity. You all are busy people. You all have things to do. And you do those things in the realm of time. When a person stops and says, let's just sit and talk together. Well, that's quality time. Joanne and I have always enjoyed when she comes home often. We sit in the family room and we have a cup of, oh, she has a cup of coffee. I have a Diet Coke, or else I have a glass of water or something of that nature. That's all I'm drinking right now. My voice is getting a little dry here. Quality time is a value. You're able to talk about your day, how things are going. And by debriefing with another person your life, your events, it helps to calm the spirit. It helps you to enjoy being with somebody who enjoys being with you. That means you are valued. The third is receiving gifts. So actually also giving gifts. So not only can you give words of affirmation, but also receive them. You can not only give time, but quality time, but you can receive quality time. Not only can you receive gifts, but you also have the capacity to give gifts. Now, this is Joanne, my wife's I would say the number one love language. She enjoys giving. She does this well. She's always paying attention to something that you might appreciate having. Fact is, she begins Christmas shopping for the next Christmas in December. She's thinking about each of the grandchildren and her children and myself. And she gets great pleasure on Christmas morning when the children open up their gifts. And we open them up one at a time. I tend to hand out the gift. We stop and we watch. And there's paper flying all over, and we're looking at the gifts and the next gift for somebody else. And it's kind of a fun time. It's receiving gifts and it's giving gifts. And that's a tremendous love language. Acts of service. This is where a person enjoys doing things for other people, often without being asked. There are things that I do naturally. I clean the kitchen. We're going to be having supper a little bit later. Joanne will be making something to eat, and I will eat, and I will clean the kitchen completely without her doing it at all. I'll clean the kitchen. That's just how I do things. It's an act of service. I do those well. Um, Physical touch. There's a need for physical touch, not necessarily sexual touch, but physical touch. Some people like touching you on the shoulder, some like shaking hands, some like being within close proximity of you. These acts are very necessary and very powerful. Touch is so healing. Uh, the lead pastor of our church spoke 2 Sundays ago about when their son was born. He was a good size, but he had to be an incubator because his breathing wasn't normal. And so they were making sure that he was getting proper oxygen for a while. And after a while, and the mother hadn't yet seen the boy, um, and they brought the boy in an incubator to the room. And they said, "Now we need to leave him in the incubator." And she said, "No, Mama Bear says, bring the baby to me. I want to hold my baby." And here's what was interesting. The little boy was brought and the mother held, and his body temperature went to the temperature it was supposed to be by the feel and the touch of mother. Boy, that's powerful. So these 5 areas, and you might want to sit back, or you might even, I get the book and read it. It's such an easy read, a good read. But not only that, it makes you realize different people express love different ways. My wife's number one is the giving of gifts. She loves to get gifts, but she really loves to give gifts. I always thought my number one act of love language, was acts of service. I love doing things for other people. But my oldest daughter and son-in-law said, well, that might be true. We think words of affirmation are more what you are. You're always saying encouraging words to people. And so I think those two are probably the two that I do more of. You might want to think about which ones do I do more of. Why is this important? I had this class here, but with it's a night course. It's an adult degree completion program that Trinity Western has, and there's usually about, say, 10 students in the class. And a year ago to a year and a half ago now, no, it would be a year ago right now, I was in the class with the students and we were doing discussion. Now I can't do discussion with you because of the computer challenge, etc. And this one woman, we were talking about marriage and so forth, and this one woman said, you know, the one thing I most have really desired for my husband is for him to say, I love you. He struggles with the words, saying words of affirmation. Not that he won't, but he doesn't say much. She said, I seldom have heard him actually say it. I said, well, wait a minute now. Did you not just say earlier that last night you were working on that big paper that you have to hand in and today it's due, and he stayed up till 2 or 3 in the morning reading through to make sure you're okay and encouraging you? Did he do that? She says, yes. I said, do you know what he was doing? She said, what? He was saying, I love you. She looked at me. Oh, he didn't use the words, I love you, but his nonverbal language of his literally willingness, giving you quality time and literally giving you words of affirmation about how good what you were writing. The whole time, he is actually saying to you, "I love you." And she said, "I never heard that before." She said, "All these years, I never thought about that." Power of communication in marriage and family is very, very important. Here's where I'm going to stop with this here, and then we'll continue next day. I want to talk about the power of spiritual communication, especially with when you have children and with teenagers. And Josh McDowell did some research and came up with these statistics that I think are pretty significant. When teenagers do not have an objective standard to live by, when they don't have an objective standard to live by, in other words, when we live just for ourselves and we don't live within the realm of something greater than ourselves, we put our children at risk. So here's some statistics. When teens do not have an objective standard to live by, they become 30%, 36% more likely to lie to their parents. That's a pretty significant number. That 1/3 of the time, they're likely going to be lying to the parents. 48% more likely to cheat on an exam. That means almost 1 out of every 2 teenagers um, are likely to be lying and or cheating when parents don't involve themselves on a spiritual level. 200% more likely to physically hurt somebody. When teens do not have an objective standard to live by, they become very self-centered and thinking that life is about themselves, and it becomes survival of the fittest, which means I can take you out physically and it's fine. There's no standard that says I shouldn't do that. 200% more likely to watch pornography. When teens don't have an objective standard that helps them have moral values, they're more likely to spend time with pornography by a 200% mark. Is that bad? Of course it is. Pornography is not good. And the more pornography, the more it hurts you psychologically. You see, if you're raising boys and they are allowed to watch pornography, they can think of women as objects of self-pleasure, not human beings. And that's horrific. And by the way, that can work exactly the opposite with females of males. 200% more likely to watch pornography. When teens don't have an objective standard to live by, they become 200% more likely to get drunk. You start drinking at a young age, it easily turns into a habit. And that habit is hard to stop because it's a drug. And you become more and more dependent on that drug. You need that fix. You need it psychologically. It will drive you. And it is true what is said that once you're an alcoholic, you are always an alcoholic. You can stop drinking, but you could start drinking again. All it takes is one drink and you can start again very easily. It's 225 times more likely to steal. When teens don't have an objective standard, they are 225 times more likely to steal. You see the power of communication? To teach children moral values, that you don't lie, that you don't cheat, that you don't physically hurt somebody, that you stay away from pornography, that you stay away from illicit alcohol that can really be harmful to your brain and its development, and that you don't steal. The moral fiber needs to be there to stop this. 300% more likely to take illegal drugs. Worse than drinking is the issue of taking illegal drugs because it is such easy manner to step into a habit and to become a person who becomes a drug addict. When teens do not have an objective standard to live by, they easily become up to 600% more likely to attempt suicide. 600% more likely to attempt suicide. That's not healthy. That is not good. That is not wise. And so it is important for us to realize that communication is critical in our marriage development, in our parenting development, in our responsibility in how we treat and develop our children. So we don't deal with these statistics: 36% more likely to lie, 40% more likely to cheat, 200% more likely to physically hurt somebody, 200% more likely to watch pornography, 200% more likely to get drunk, 225% more likely to steal, 300% more likely to take illegal drugs, and 600% more likely to attempt suicide. Those are frightening numbers. But what's the antidote? What is the biggest factor that really helps us? I'll tell you 2 factors. The parent who loves their child and their teenager, and the parent who teaches moral values. How important it is to do that. Now, next day, I'll just show it to you. We're going to go on to effective communication in marriage. We're going to be talking about some of this stuff, but we're going to stop today because it's 1:15 and I need to get this taped. So I need to say goodbye. We will see you next day and we'll continue this topic. Have a good weekend. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day.
You too.
Bye, sir.
Goodbye. Okay.
See you.
Goodbye.